Everyone says they don't have time to make homemade meals, but if you just have 3 nannies, 2 butlers, a housekeeper,
They're the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet. They moved from England to get away from the scrutiny of the press, and
I was living in the middle of nowhere in Toronto, Canada, and
Meghan Markle's journey from royal life to Hollywood was met with both excitement and skepticism. After stepping away from royal duties, she and her husband, Prince Harry, carved their path as media moguls, and Netflix was among the first major streaming platforms to take a chance on their content. What started as a high-profile production deal for a show with Love, Meghan quickly unraveled into a chaotic drama, with Meghan at the center. Despite the initial promise, insiders are now calling the fallout from this deal the messiest in Netflix's recent history. What was meant to be a moment of celebration quickly spiraled into a disaster during a private screening of Season 2, where Meghan's behavior shocked everyone in the room. In the wake of her outbursts, Netflix executives made a crucial decision, leading to the termination of her contract and the end of her Hollywood ambitions. Here's how it all went down.
Or in a beekeeper's suit and things like that. And she clearly...
Absolutely appalling. And it was about 2 sentences on each page. Let me read you the next thing.
Okay.
Ourself. I don't know what to call myself. I think it speaks to this chapter many of us find ourselves in, where none of us are.
The tension began to build during an internal screening event for With Love Meghan Season 2. Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos himself organized the event, bringing in top executives, crew members, and the entire cast. This screening, set to be a celebratory occasion showcasing the first 3 finished episodes, soon became a war zone. As the credits rolled, feedback poured in from the crew. Cast members, editors, and technicians who had worked tirelessly for months on the project. Issues like continuity errors, awkward jump cuts, and grammar mistakes in Meghan's dialogue were pointed out. Initially, the crew tried to maintain a professional atmosphere, but it wasn't long before Meghan's temper flared. Rather than accepting the feedback, she lashed out at those who dared to speak up, calling them hecklers and dismissing their opinions as personal attacks. The scene quickly escalated, and what should have been a productive discussion turned into an uncomfortable confrontation.
Told it to her friends. I think they were all thought she sent it to them. They had no choice.
Yeah. Well, whatever way it was. So it's been a disaster. And one of the disasters was the packing, which she spent day after day, so she said, poor thing, packing it up the right way in the right colour. And it's cost an absolute fortune. So the whole thing has been a disaster.
Meghan Markle's response to the feedback during the screening stunned everyone in the room. According to multiple sources, she stood beside Sarandos, visibly irate, and accused the crew of trying to sabotage her work. She loudly declared that their feedback didn't matter, and they were only attempting to undermine her vision. The room, which had initially been filled with anticipation, turned tense as Meghan's tirade continued. The shock was palpable. No one had expected the calm, poised Duchess to erupt in such an aggressive manner. But it didn't end there. Meghan went on to claim that none of the crew would even have a job at Netflix if it weren't for her. She told the entire room that they owed her gratitude, not criticism. As her words hung in the air, the crew remained silent, unsure of how to respond. Meghan stormed out of the screening, leaving a room full of stunned employees behind her.
That's been a spectacular success, hasn't it? And I know there are quite a lot, I certainly did, but they did a lot of very nice tarts that were sold at my local supermarket. They're absolutely top-notch. But there was some talk that she apparently was the view, I mean, she's got some podcast that's already finished where it's sort of like women found, I mean, I don't bother learning the names of these things because they never last that long.
Meghan's outburst reverberated through the room, and the fallout was immediate. The crew members who had worked tirelessly on the show were left in stunned silence. Many felt personally attacked, while others were left disappointed and disillusioned by her behavior. Her response to the constructive criticism showed a side of her that hadn't been seen before, and it caused deep rifts between her and the crew. According to insiders, several crew members were so rattled by the encounter that they requested reassignment or voiced their desire to leave the project entirely. The tension was so high that many began to question whether Meghan could continue to lead the show in such an unprofessional manner. At the same time, Netflix executives began to reassess their partnership with Meghan. What had been a promising collaboration was now spiraling into something far less manageable.
Get back to assess her new brand as ever. She's previously hinted she might never restock her jam because the first batch sold out within 45 minutes. Now, the first batch was, 60 jars?
Shortly after the explosive screening, Netflix made a decision that would change the trajectory of Meghan's career. Insiders revealed that the streaming giant had already made up their minds. Meghan's contract would not be renewed. The decision wasn't based on the performance of With Love Meghan, which had seen some success, but on her increasingly difficult behavior on set. Sources reported that the Netflix executives, including Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters, had already decided Meghan's behavior was too problematic to ignore. The cancellation wasn't just a business move, it was a reflection of the personal issues that had come to light during the project. Despite her show's content not being a commercial failure, Meghan's actions created too much internal chaos. Her inability to accept feedback, coupled with her explosive temper, had become a liability, and Netflix couldn't afford the risk of further damage to their reputation.
To share it or buy part of it because I didn't think it was any good. So that's why they're not doing it.
They didn't want to be associated with the brand. She said, but didn't she reckon that she, apparently, friends are saying, she expected to, wants to become a billionaire. She wants to make serious money and, and be this successful entrepreneur. But
in the days following her contract termination, Meghan desperately sought to salvage her relationship with Netflix. She reportedly made numerous attempts to reach out to Ted Sarandos, pleading for a chance to redeem herself with a one-off project. Meghan pitched ideas for a standalone special or even a travel series, hoping that a new project could repair her fractured image. However, her calls for reconciliation were met with cold silence. Sarandos and Peters were firm in their stance that Meghan was no longer welcome at Netflix. Meghan's pleas fell on deaf ears as the executives quietly shut the door on any future collaboration. In her final attempt to regain favor, Meghan reportedly sent an email detailing her proposal for a project she would fund herself, offering Netflix full editorial control. Sarandos' response? He forwarded the email to the legal department, signaling that the relationship was over for good.
I don't know what to call myself. I think it speaks to this chapter many of us find ourselves in, where none of us are one note, but I believe the notes I'm playing are part of the same song.
My God, this is genuine.
As the fallout continued to unfold, the public's perception of Meghan Markle began to shift dramatically. Her outburst at the screening was just the tip of the iceberg, and soon, stories began leaking from within Netflix's walls. Crew members who had previously been loyal to her began speaking out, describing her as controlling, rude, and difficult to work with. Reports of her behavior spread like wildfire, and the public who had once viewed her as a polished and charismatic media personality started to see her in a different light. Instead of being a visionary, Meghan was now portrayed as a diva, more concerned with her own image than the collaborative effort of creating a show. The public backlash grew as more insiders shared their accounts of working with Meghan. The warm, relatable image she once cultivated began to crumble as her true personality surfaced.
I was living in the middle of nowhere in Toronto, Canada, and I didn't even really know the word royal. I mean, besides the Lord song. I love that song. It's an amazing pop rock ballad.
Netflix, already reeling from the drama surrounding Meghan Markle, had to deal with the consequences of the fallout. The damage wasn't just personal to Meghan, it also reflected poorly on the streaming giant. Netflix had invested millions of dollars into Season 2 of With Love Meghan, and the project was already well into production when things fell apart. As the fallout from the screening became public, Netflix executives scrambled to figure out how to release the show without further damaging their brand. At one point, the company even considered shelving the show entirely and writing off the financial loss. The decision to release the show was eventually made, but the shadow of Meghan's behavior loomed large over its release. Behind the scenes, Netflix executives debated how to handle the situation and salvage the company's reputation without exacerbating the damage.
She actually sold candles scented like her vagina. For God's sake, the woman has made fortune. Not that she needed to, she is a multimillionaire, but she's made an absolute fortune doing this lifestyle brand and everything. And obviously Meghan thought she could do that.
Yeah, but
As the project evolved, it became clear that with Love, Meghan was no longer the cultural exploration that had originally been pitched. Instead, it became a self-promotional vehicle for Meghan herself. The show, which was initially intended to spotlight global stories and inspiring women, began to revolve more and more around Meghan's own narrative. Her face was in every frame, and her voice dominated each episode. This shift was noticeable to the Netflix crew, who began to express their dissatisfaction with the direction the show had taken. The content, which could have been groundbreaking, was now viewed as self-serving and narcissistic. This transformation alienated many of the creative team who had initially believed in the project's potential. As the show became more about Meghan than the stories it was supposed to tell, internal support from staff members started to erode, further contributing to the collapse of the deal.
You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, When? Yes, that's right, friend. You see, my wife and I are totally like, you should write a book because your family's like stupid, and then so are like journalists.
As Meghan's behavior continued to alienate the people around her, the consequences spread throughout the industry. Advisors, stylists, and public relations firms who had supported her since her royal exit began to distance themselves from her. Agencies that once took her calls now ignored her, and one major PR firm who had been with her from the start quietly dropped her without explanation. Hollywood, which had once been eager to embrace her, began to see Meghan as a cautionary tale. She had the talent, the platform, and the fame, but her inability to maintain professional relationships quickly became a liability. The once glowing narrative around her post-royal career was now replaced by whispers of her arrogance and entitlement. A studio executive summed it up succinctly, saying, "You can be demanding, but you can't be delusional." This statement, circulated privately, captured the growing sentiment in Hollywood. Meghan was no longer the golden girl.
But he also did his own speeches and everything, but now he has to obey Meghan. He absolutely has to.
Do you really think it's like this? I don't like it when we always blame, the woman. There's this
After the Netflix fallout, Meghan made several attempts to pivot her career. She tried to break into podcasting, pitching a raw, unfiltered series where she could speak her truth without any scripts. However, her past association with Spotify, which had already cut ties, made it difficult to find a new platform willing to take a chance on her. Her social media rebrand, complete with new photos and inspirational quotes, failed to generate the engagement she had hoped for. Her once vibrant Instagram presence quickly fizzled out as followers criticized her for being out of touch. Meghan, who had once been seen as a force of change, was now struggling to find her footing. The projects she pitched, like luxury shopping series or spiritual documentaries, were met with indifference, further demonstrating the depth of her career decline.
Success, that she's already having to step back a bit. The reality is, this has been an absolute joke of a brand, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I was told by somebody they were only putting out 10 jars. So, of course, it would all go because I think she sold them to her friend.
Meghan, however, wasn't ready to accept defeat. In one final attempt to salvage her career, she personally reached out to Ted Sarandos with a proposal for a special. She pitched a project that would showcase her resilience and redeem her image, offering to fund part of the production and let Netflix have full editorial control. However, her email was quickly forwarded to Netflix's legal department, signaling the official end of any hope for reconciliation. This cold response left Meghan with no options. Her last-ditch effort to regain her position in the industry fell flat, and Sarandos' silence was the final nail in the coffin of her Netflix career. Meghan Markle's erasure from Netflix marked the beginning of her slow fade from Hollywood. Projects were canceled, meetings ceased, and her name, which once commanded attention, now carried a risk warning. In an industry driven by public perception, Meghan had lost her star power. The people who once supported her now avoided her at all costs. Hollywood's treatment of Meghan had shifted from that of a rising star to a cautionary tale. Despite her best efforts to rebuild her image, she was quietly, deliberately erased from the industry. She had the platform, the resources, and the fame, but her behavior and poor handling of professional relationships ultimately led to her downfall. In the end, Meghan Markle became a symbol of what happens when a celebrity's ego outpaces their ability to collaborate and grow.
They're the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet. They moved from England to get away from the scrutiny of the press, and all they do is try to get in the press in the United States.
So it's no surprise to people who work in Buckingham Palace. They saw and witnessed all this here.
Meghan Markle's journey from royal outsider to Hollywood star was filled with promise and potential. Yet, the same ambition that drove her forward also contributed to her undoing. What could have been a successful collaboration with Netflix turned into one of the most chaotic fallout stories in recent memory. Her behavior, marked by explosive outbursts, arrogance, and an inability to accept feedback, turned her from a potential media mogul into a liability. Her fall from grace is a cautionary tale for anyone in the industry. Talent and ambition may open doors, but personal conduct and professionalism are what keep them open. Meghan Markle's silence now speaks volumes, as she is quietly erased from the Hollywood scene. Her name synonymous with a failed career that once had the world's attention. The story of what could have been is now lost to history.